Regarding 6 cost this set, from my point of view, most of the players went into simple route, 6 cost equals powerful equals damage. And then when the damage meters were not meeting their expectations, players went 6 cost bad and completely discarded all the utility they provide. Mel providing shield plus lifesaver, Victor providing CC, and Warwick providing execute plus tankiness. Do you believe that their introduction could have been handled better to emphasize their strengths, or can we blame players a little? Well, okay. So the way you frame this question is interesting, because can we blame players? A good designer never blames players. It's not players' fault, right? Your job is to ship something that players enjoy and understand, and your job is to understand how they're going to interpret it and how they're going to, like, when we ship a thing, my job is to go, this is how players will react. I think it will be positively, and we should do that, right? Like, so saying, should we blame players? We should never blame players. Like, you're a bad designer if your first thought is, I'm going to blame players. Don't do that. Now, that being said, the question is, are 6 costs designed right? Like, is too much of their power in their utility as opposed to their damage? And we know damage is the most satisfying thing, right? Most players look at the number and they go, wow, 20,000 damage, that champion is powerful, right? Without taking into the context of, like, well, yeah, you were facing a Bruiser Mundo that healed repeatedly, so you could deal lots of damage. It has nothing to do with the power of the champion. It's just there was a lot of damage to deal. So damage is more satisfying. I agree. Part of this is designers like to cook. It's like, well, if they're just big damage meters, who cares, right? Giving them utility makes an interesting puzzle, and I think the designers working on these 6 costs were like, I want to make an interesting puzzle to be solved, right? So, like, Mel is all about, like, healing. I want to do this cool mechanic where Mel prevents you from dying like she did in the show, and so that's going to be the mechanic, right? Designers like to be clever. Now, did they overcook a little? Maybe. You could debate that. I certainly know there are people who are like, why did Victor have to have a 2-second stun? You know, and like that's the thing we're going to stake our poll in. It's like, well, 2-second stuns, we know those are frustrating. We know those are going to be tough. So there's some, like, overcooking there. That being said, I think we were okay. Like, Warwick was one we knew, for example, that, like, players were going to underestimate until it's like they learned how to itemize him, they learned how to play him. I'm going to pick on Raptor here, but watching Raptor's journey from Warwick is absolute garbage to Warwick is now the best has been pretty entertaining to watch. But yeah, I think part of that is, like, Victor is so easy to appreciate, right? You throw him in and he stuns a board. Great. But Warwick, it's like, well, oh, wait, you have to keep him alive. But when you do, he heals a bunch and there's effective, like, it's great. So I don't know. You could say we overcooked a little, but overall, I think for a 6 cost and for a novel mechanic, I think it did fine. I think the bigger problem with 6 costs is that they're a central focal point of variance that allows player to fixate and blame. And that's the tricky thing, right? Very few players go, yep, they hit their 2-star 4, like 2 of their 2-star 4 costs, therefore they're going to beat me. But many players will be like, they hit a 2-star 5 cost on 8, that's bullshit. Or they hit a 6 cost, that's bullshit, right? Like, the game is full of lots and lots of ticks of variance, but 6 cost is such an in-your-face moment of variance that's just like, they have one and I don't, and I'm grumpy about it, that it created sort of a scapegoat for performance that I don't think has been healthy for the game. And so I will be glad when 6 costs are gone. They were good for the set. I'm glad we did them, but I'm also glad they're just a set mechanic. They're not a permanent part of TFT. So cool. Yeah.